We talk a lot about the line on this program, almost always, if I'm being honest here, about the offensive line. Going to switch it up today. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also happen to offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates that I hope you'll also check out. Joint practice this afternoon between the Steelers and Bills at Acrisure Stadium. Not open to the public, open to reporters. I'll be over there covering it for DK Pittsburgh Sports. Looking forward to it, actually. And I'm looking forward to it mostly because if you know anything about joint practices, or even the history of joint practices as they've played out in recent years, they tend to draw all the attention to who's up front. And for some reason, the temperature seems to scale that much more on these joint practices than even preseason games, than actual games in front of actual humans and TV cameras. I don't know exactly why that is, but I think it's a pretty neat thing, and it might just be because you take everything else out of the equation. Even the X's and O's and the skill players and everything else, you're just doing man-on-man, macho versus macho. And yeah, of course I'm going to be interested in how the O-line does. But today, I want to take the opportunity to share one observation that was made for me the other day by the one, the only, Montravius Adams, when I'd asked him a question about, you know what, I don't even remember what I asked about. It was something just related to the defense in general or how things went out there. And he came back at me with a question of his own and asking, did you see how they moved the ball? And then when he saw me hesitate for a second, he said, I mean, when we were all still out there, meaning the actual players. And I said, well, I'm still not getting it here because they really didn't move the ball. And he goes, exactly. Big smile on his face. And he was right in hindsight. And in the second viewing of the game, the Texans really didn't make anything happen on the ground. And yeah, I mean, they're mostly a C.J. Stroud offense and blah, blah, blah. But you know what? Everyone gets their victories, and everyone gets to enjoy their victories. And Mon had his, including his own bit of splash, with a sack and a nice arms-folded celebration. And in that moment, all of us, even those of us who very, very, very closely follow the Pittsburgh Steelers, were reminded that Mon is still a thing here, and still a pretty good thing. But where's the D-line overall? What is it overall? And is it going to be good enough to make what Terrell Austin himself says out loud is going to be the key difference toward creating more turnovers, meaning take care of business up front, don't burden the inside linebackers with it, certainly don't burden the safeties with it, and let Minkah Fitzpatrick roam and eat. None of which can happen if the big boys up front are giving up yards on the ground. So who's on this depth chart? Well, you've got the obvious three in Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, and Keanu Benton. You've got Mon Adams, not to be forgotten. So what you have after that, and depending on your belief as to whether or not the team is going to have 6 or 7 D-line guys once all the cuts are made, you've got Dean Lowry, who's come over. He's had an injury, so he's been held out of a lot of situations in Latrobe. Don't really know what to expect from him. You've got DeMarvin Leal, who I recently dedicated an entire program to trying to figure out what they're going to do with him and whether or not he's even going to make it, like make the 53. Well, he's answered that in a big way. He had a really good camp, which closed, by the way, yesterday at St. Vincent College. He was very visible, regardless of where they lined him up, and the fact that they did line him up in multiple spaces would appear to tell you that much more about their intentions of both keeping him and maybe even utilizing him. Not just on special teams, though he is going to be a part of that as well. But if you can bounce him inside, you can bounce him outside, and you can work away from a perceived shortcoming in stopping the run, meaning just don't ask him to do that, you might be able to finally make something of a recent third-round pick, and that's a win for everybody when that happens. Somewhere next, you start to get to the edge here, and you've got to name some names that you think might not make it, in addition to one, maybe two at the most, who can still squeak their way in. Isaiah Loudermilk is someone who I think clearly has been bypassed by Leal at this camp. Not everybody saw that coming. I saw Loudermilk as being in jeopardy. He arrived with a reputation as being just Mr. Run Stopper. He was going to be that guy. And he's better at that than he is at anything else. He certainly is not someone who's pursuing the quarterback. And from what I've heard, and this was from another defensive lineman, not Adams, the emphasis really is different with the defense this year in terms of the D-line. They do want those guys getting back there. Now, they always wanted it when they had a healthy Cam, but they're really looking for other people to be able to get into the backfield and make a difference, possibly even with some splash. So that's going to favor Leal. It also might favor Logan Lee. He was the 6th-round pick this summer. He's not... How do you put it with someone like Lee? I've heard Mike Tomlin use the term he's got a high floor, and some might take that as an insult. What it actually means is there's only so bad you'll ever be, okay? In other words, you're going to be really consistent. You're never going to have some super dramatic drop-off. But it also tends to mean you don't have some exotic ceiling. And that's, of course, why you last till the 6th round. Now, Lee also has capability on all of the special teams. He's been working with the interior group, the new kickoff coverage. He's even done a little bit of long snapping. So between Loudermilk and Lee, I'm thinking that you're looking at Lee. And as for the group overall, I hate to keep punting on this stuff, but let's get Cam out there. You know, let's see even just a little bit of Cam. I get it. I get why he's being held out. He doesn't need a training camp. But it's going to be the first time we see him really in significant action, in anger, since the groin surgery and everything else. And, you know, same goes for Larry, who's always being treated with care and understandably because of his lingering foot injury. Now, Benton banged himself up with the eye getting poked. Get them all out there. Let's go, you know? Let's see that. If not today in the joint practice, then definitely this weekend against the Bills in the preseason game. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's J1Q comes from Kent, who says, "Good morning, DK. I guess my opinion or hope in regard to the quarterback situation is that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are at least as good as Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. At a minimum, they're that good, aren't they? I still think Mason Rudolph deserved an offer, and that's coming from a big Fields fan." You know, Kent, I appreciate the sentiment that you're sharing there, mostly because it expresses, coincidentally or otherwise, the same thing that I feel about the state of the team's most important position right now. And that's that I have no idea. I can't begin to describe how much I'm looking forward to seeing Wilson go out there against the Bills. I really think this is going to be something that it's not going to be defining and it's not going to be excessively important or whatever, but I do think it's going to set the first real feel that a lot of us, myself included, will have for how they should feel about this team. Because it's just the big missing puzzle piece in the middle. Now, to attempt to actually answer your question, you sought out, I think if I read that correctly, a comparison between Wilson/Fields to Pickett/Trubisky. And my dude, no. Okay, that's just way off. Now, if you had at least thrown that month of Mason in there, we could have had some kind of dialogue, but not even then, really. Wilson's an established NFL veteran, won a Super Bowl, multiple All-Pros, Pro Bowls, made $1 gazillion, gonna make $1 gazillion more still, even at age 36. And none of that's for nothing. As soon as he popped out of college, you could see right away what he was going to be, and guess what? He was that, and maybe more. And Fields, I mean, say what you want about the, ball security and everything, but the number of yards that he's thrown for, the number of yards that he's run for, the number of touchdowns that he's produced, those are not like side details. He does have to control the football better. He has to prioritize, probably in more situations than he's comfortable prioritizing, that the play is over. It's kaput. It's time to shut down this play and live to see another play. But the stuff that he does, the positive stuff that he does, you can't even coach it. And I would say a lot of the same stuff for Russ. If you look at Russ's technique, it's unusual. Some of it's out of need, the way he has to move around the pocket because he can't see over the line. The touch, the unusually, strikingly soft touch that he'll put on some of his passes, the sixth sense for where the open man is, for where the momentum is with the offense, all of that's, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't take that original concept that I just laid out here and stretch it any further than it needs to be stretched. I want to see how these guys fit with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I want to see how they fit in situations that involve, maybe getting flushed out of the pocket, maybe getting threatened a little bit. Obviously, you don't want to see them get hurt. But I've gained very little, I feel, from watching 9-10 second dropbacks on Chuck Noll Field at St. Vincent College. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everyone listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. Again, I'll be over at Acrisure Stadium today covering this practice. I'll be writing a column up about it for DK Pittsburgh Sports, and we'll do another one of these tomorrow.